The camera zooms through a shattered sky, past burning stars and distant planets, to reveal the ruins of an alien world. Her world. Once vibrant and full of life, now only silent remnants of her people remain. The buildings have crumbled, forests reduced to ash, and the air is thick with despair. In the middle of all this desolation stands a lone figure, an alien widow. Clad in faded armor, her eyes are sunken, her posture defeated. She's the last of her kind, wandering through the aftermath of a lost civilization. She stumbles upon a collapsed monument, a symbol of her people's former glory, and touches the stones, her fingers trembling. For a brief moment, she seems to hold on to the memories of better days. Kneeling before the ruins, she lifts her eyes to the dying sun, its once brilliant light now fading to a sickly red. In that moment, the weight of loneliness crushes her heart. She picks up a piece of debris, perhaps a communication device that once connected her to the galaxy. With trembling hands, she tries to make contact, hoping against hope that there's someone out there. The device crackles to life for just a moment, only to fade into silence. She stares at it for a long time, disappointment washing over her. A soft, bitter laugh escapes her lips as she lowers the device, realizing just how hopeless her situation is. Hope, she thinks. It feels like a distant memory. She thought there was more to live for, but now she's not sure she can go on. She looks out at the ruins, each broken structure, a reminder of what she's lost. Her eyes linger on an old shipwreck from a previous war, and the memories flood back. Endless battles, the extinction of her species, the loneliness that followed. A tear slips down her cheek as she wipes it away. The loneliness is unbearable. But deep down, there's still a tiny flicker of hope. She doesn't want to believe she's truly alone. She needs to believe that there's more to life than this emptiness. Just as she's lost in her thoughts, a faint rumbling sound breaks the stillness, a deep roar from the sky. Her heart races as she looks up, squinting against the fading light. A small, unfamiliar craft plummets toward the ground in the distance. She freezes for a moment, the roar of the ship echoing in her ears. Could it be a sign of life? Maybe not a human, there are many alien species, but the widow feels a flicker of something deep within her. It's a possibility, however small. She hesitates, unsure of what to do. Who or what could be in that craft? Another survivor? Or a dangerous threat? Yet something within her pushes her to act, a sense of urgency that she hasn't felt in so long. The possibilities swirl in her mind. She doesn't trust easily, but maybe this is what she's been waiting for. She picks up the pace and runs toward the crash site, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approaches the wreckage, she sees the ship in pieces, its parts scattered across the barren ground. Smoke rises from the wreck, and the widow steps slow as she cautiously nears. Through the haze of smoke, she sees movement, a figure struggling to stand amid the wreckage. Her instincts kick in. She reaches for her weapon, ready to protect herself. But as the figure turns, her eyes widen in disbelief. It's a human, injured but alive. Her mind races, caught between the shock of seeing a human and the more pressing question, what do I do now? She doesn't know whether to trust him or attack. They've always been enemies, after all. The widow takes a step closer, her grip tightening around her weapon. Is this an enemy, or is this someone who can help her? She doesn't know, but one thing is clear: she must make a decision quickly. As she approaches the human, she hears his labored breath, his face contorted in pain. His ship is wrecked, and he's clearly struggling. She stares at him, still unsure of what to do. The silence between them hangs heavy, and then, just before the screen fades to black, the sound of footsteps approaching from the shadows hints that they may not be alone. Something or someone else is out there, watching. The suspense builds as the widow makes her choice, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats, wondering what will happen next. The alien widow stands frozen, her hands still gripping the weapon as she stares at the human before her. He's battered and bruised, his face streaked with dirt, but there's no mistaking the look of desperation in his eyes. She takes a cautious step forward, her heart still pounding in her chest. She's always been taught to avoid humans. They are the enemy, the ones who have fought against her kind for as long as she can remember. But here he is, lying before her, vulnerable and injured. The widow doesn't trust easily. Her people have been betrayed by others before. Something about this human strikes her as different. The human's breathing is labored, and he struggles to sit up, grimacing in pain. His clothes are torn, and the remnants of his spacecraft are scattered around him. As the widow takes another step forward, the human glances up at her. His eyes wide with both fear and surprise, she hesitates. Her mind races with questions. Why is he here? What is he doing on her world? Why did his ship crash? There's a part of her that wants to just turn and walk away, leave him to his fate, but something holds her back. Is this a coincidence, or is fate playing a role in this encounter? Could this human somehow be the key to something bigger? For a moment, they simply stare at each other, neither speaking. The silence is thick with tension, and the widow feels the weight of their shared history of conflict, distrust, and pain. Yet there's a flicker of curiosity in her gaze. She wonders if there's more to this than meets the eye. Are you ... alive? The human croaks, his voice weak but desperate. His question hangs in the air, and the widow can't help but scoff under her breath. Of course, I'm alive, she thinks bitterly. But why should I care about you? Still, she doesn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly lowers her weapon, her eyes scanning him for any sign of trickery. The last thing she needs is to fall into another trap. But there's something in his eyes, a raw vulnerability that makes her pause. After a few moments, she takes a deep breath and finally speaks. I don't know why you're here, but I don't have time to waste on humans. The human struggles to sit up fully, wincing with pain. I'm not here by choice, he says, his voice strained. My ship was attacked. I'm the last one alive. I need help. The widow's eyes narrow. Attacked. She wonders if he's lying. But the truth is, she doesn't care about his past. Her own survival is all that matters. Still, something about his words makes her stop and think. Could this human be telling the truth? Despite the mistrust that churns in her stomach, the widow knows that she can't leave him here. Not when there's still a chance that he could help her. The harsh reality of her situation weighs heavily on her shoulders. She's alone, isolated, and losing hope. Maybe, just maybe, this human could be the ally she never expected. Fine, she says, her voice cold. I'll help you, Abbot. Get in my way. The human nods weakly, relieved, though his expression is clouded with pain. Thank you, he mutters, his voice barely audible. I'm not sure how much longer I can last on my own. The widow watches him for a moment. Still uncertain, but she knows she can't just leave him to die. She's not sure why, but she feels a flicker of something within her, a small spark of hope. Maybe this is the chance she's been waiting for. It's a chance to fight back against the isolation, the emptiness of her world. As she helps him to his feet, the widow notices something strange in the distance. A flicker of movement. She tenses, instinctively reaching for her weapon again. The human looks up at her, his brow furrowing in confusion. What is it? He asks, his voice hushed. The widow's eyes narrow as she scans the horizon. We're not alone. Before she can react, there's a loud crash from behind them. A sudden force slams into the ground, sending a shockwave through the air. The widow whirls around, her weapon raised. But all she sees is dust swirling in the air. The human looks at her, his face pale. What was that? I don't know, she says, her voice tight with tension, but I don't intend to find out. As they move cautiously toward the wreckage of the human ship, the widow feels an unsettling sense of danger creeping in. They may have just found each other, but the real challenge is yet to come, and she's not sure if they'll make it through alive. This part introduces the human character and sets up the tension between the widow and the human. It also builds suspense as they realize they are not alone and that something more dangerous is approaching. Let me know if you need adjustments. The widow and the human cautiously move through the wreckage of his ship. The air heavy with the scent of burning metal and smoke. The widow's senses are heightened, every instinct telling her to stay alert. Something about the situation doesn't sit right with her. The crash, the strange movements in the distance, she knows they're not alone. But for now, the human's safety is her responsibility, and she can't afford to be distracted by shadows. She glances back at the human, who's struggling to walk. His body is battered, but he's trying his best to keep up as they reach the wreck. The widow takes a deep breath, scanning the surroundings once more. Stay close, she says curtly, her eyes darting around for any sign of danger. The human nods, but his expression is one of frustration. His injuries are taking their toll, and he's finding it harder to keep up. I can't move much longer, he mutters, his voice hoarse. If you leave me, I won't make it. The widow glances at him, her eyes softening for just a second. Before she catches herself, why does it matter? She doesn't know this human. He's an anemia symbol of everything her people fought against. And yet, something inside her stirs. A deep, buried part of her long ago forgotten. She can't place it. For a brief moment, the widow's mind drifts to her people, their culture, their history, and the honor that came with it. They were proud, noble, and strong. Now she's the last one. What's the point of this fight? She's been struggling to hold on to hope, but it slips away with every passing day. But now, here is this human, a being she once thought of as nothing more than an enemy, a threat to her existence. And yet, in the face of destruction, in the face of loss, she wonders if there's more to this. We need to find shelter, she says, her voice steady again. We'll figure out what to do next. The human looks at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty, but there's also a glimmer of gratitude. I know you don't trust me, he says quietly, but I need your help. I didn't choose to crash here. I didn't choose any of this, but I'm not your enemy. The widow stops walking, surprised by his words. She has heard humans speak of honor before, but it's always been a trick, a lie. Yet there's something about the sincerity in his voice that catches her off guard. She looks him over, his clothes torn, his body battered, but his eyes are clear, steady. No sign of deception. I don't care about your past, she replies, her voice flat. I'm here to survive, not to learn your history. And I'm not going to let you slow me down. The human nods in understanding, his face grim as he limps forward, trying his best to keep up. I get it, he says. Survival first, but I'm not useless. I can help you. As they move through the barren landscape, the widow can't help but notice the human's resilience. Despite his injuries, despite the odds, he's determined to keep going. He talks to her as they walk, telling her about his homeworld, the struggles his people face, and his mission to explore the galaxy. He's not a soldier, not a warrior, but a simple man trying to make sense of a broken universe. And the widow finds herself listening, even though she doesn't want to. So, what happened to you? The human asks, breaking the silence. You mentioned before that your people are ... gone. The widow tenses, her expression hardening. She wants to shut him out, ignore the question. But there's something in his tone, a quiet empathy that makes her hesitate. She takes a deep breath and looks at the ground. The weight of her people's loss presses down on her. My people. were ... wiped out, she says slowly. We were the rulers of this galaxy, but we fought wars, made enemies, and in the end, we lost everything. Now, I'm the last one. The human listens quietly, not interrupting. There's no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. It's a small gesture, but it feels like a bridge a crack in the wall she's built around herself. You're not alone anymore. The human says softly, his voice filled with a quiet strength. I'm here. She doesn't know why, but those words make her pause. Alone. It's a word she's come to know all too well. But hearing it spoken by him feels ... different. It makes her question everything she thought she knew. She looks at him again, this time not with suspicion, but with something else in certainty, perhaps, or maybe something deeper. She doesn't want to admit it, but the human's presence feels less like a threat and more like a lifeline. The widow opens her mouth to respond, but before she can, a loud crackle echoes through the air. She freezes, her eyes scanning the horizon. The human also looks up, his face tense. The ground beneath them shakes slightly, and distant flashes of light flicker across the sky. The widow grabs the human by the arm, pulling him toward a nearby rock formation for cover. We need to move now, she orders. As they crouch behind the rocks, the widow's mind races. Something is out there, something dangerous, and it's coming for them in this part. The alien widow and the human begin to slowly build trust, each revealing pieces of their past. The tension is still there, but there's a sense of fragile connection starting to form. Suspense is created as they face a new threat, leaving the audience wondering what's lurking in the distance. Let me know if you need any changes. The widow's heart pounds in her chest as she crouches behind the rocks, her senses on high alert. The air is thick with tension, and she can feel the human beside her, breathing heavily, his injured body still fighting to stay conscious. The faint sounds of distant rumbling reach her ears, and she instinctively tightens her grip on her weapon. Whatever is out there, it's not just a random threat, it's hunting them. The human shifts slightly, his face twisted in pain, but his eyes are sharp. What's happening? He whispers, his voice barely audible. What's that sound? The widow glances over at him, her expression grim. It's the signal I've been dreading, she murmurs, her voice tinged with anger. They've found us. The human looks at her, confused. Who? The widow hesitates for a moment, her mind racing as she tries to make sense of the situation. She knows this is no ordinary enemy. This is something bigger, something more dangerous than the few sporadic scavengers or creatures that roam the land. The enemy she speaks of is something her people have fought before, remnant of the old wars. Hunter drones, she says, her voice cold and steady. Machines created to track and eliminate any survivors. They've been searching for me for months. I thought I had escaped them, but they finally found me. The human's eyes widen. You've been running from them all this time? The widow nods sharply. My people thought they were a weapon to protect us, but after the wars, they turned on us. Now they roam the galaxy, hunting down anything left of our species. A chill runs down the human spine as he processes the information. So, they're here because of you, he asks, his voice filled with disbelief. Not just me, the widow replies, her voice tinged with bitterness. They're hunting anyone they can find. And now they've found us. Before the human can respond, there's a sudden, sharp crack from the distant sand explosion, followed by a deep, mechanical growl. The widow's eyes narrow. They're close, she whispers urgently. We need to move now. She stands up, her body aching from the wounds she sustained in the past, but she doesn't slow down. The human struggles to keep up, his injuries making every step painful, but he pushes forward, determined to help. Despite his weakness, he knows this is a fight for survival. As they make their way deeper into the rocky terrain, the widow keeps her eyes trained on the horizon, searching for any signs of movement. The enemy drones are relentless, and once they lock onto a target, they won't stop until it's eliminated. "I don't know how we'll escape this," the human says, his voice filled with frustration. "We're outnumbered and outgunned." The widow glances at him, her face unreadable. "Don't doubt yourself. The only way out is forward. We fight or we die." She's never been one to rely on anyone. But in this moment, there's no time for pride. The human's determination is something she can't ignore. And for the first time in a long while, she allows herself to hope. Maybe they can make it out of this. Suddenly, a shadow passes over them, and the widow's heart skips a beat. She looks up just in time to see one of the hunter drones descending from the sky, a massive mechanical beast. Its glowing red eyes scanning the ground below. It's searching for them. The widow knows they have only moments before the drone locks onto their position. "We need to hide," she says urgently, pushing the human toward a narrow crevice in the rock. Now they scramble into the crevice, barely managing to squeeze through as the drone's searchlight sweeps over the area. The widow holds her breath, praying they won't be detected. The human's breathing is ragged beside her, but he's silent, knowing better than to make a sound. The drone hovers overhead, its searchlight sweeping the ground, its mechanical whirs filling the air. For a long moment, everything is still. The widow can feel her pulse in her ears, her grip on her weapon tightening. If they're caught, there's no escaping. This is it. Just as she's about to breathe a sigh of relief, the drone suddenly turns, its massive mechanical arm reaching out. It moves with terrifying precision, scanning the area once more. The widow's heart races as she watches it hover closer to their hiding spot. This is it. We're done. But then, a sudden explosion rocks the ground, sending a shockwave through the air. The drone jerks violently, its searchlight flickering as its systems begin to malfunction. The widow looks up in surprise. The human, despite his injuries, has somehow managed to activate one of his ship's weapons, an emergency flare. The drone systems fail, and it crashes to the ground, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The widow wastes no time. She pulls the human from the crevice, and they make a run for it, not looking back as the drone burns in the distance. "We're not out of this yet," the widow says, her voice steady, but the relief in her eyes is unmistakable. "But we've got a chance?" The human nods, breathing heavily. "I guess I'm not completely useless after all," he mutters with a grin. The widow allows herself a small smile, but it fades quickly as she looks around. This is just the beginning. The drones are only part of the threat. There's a bigger danger ahead, and they're not out of the woods yet. In this part, the true nature of the threat is revealed: the hunter drones that have been hunting the widow. The tension reaches its peak as they face off against one of the drones, and the human's unexpected action provides a moment of hope. This sets up the next stage of their journey and leaves the audience on the edge of their seats, eager to see what happens next. Let me know if you need any changes. Ask ChatGPT. The air is thick with smoke and tension as the widow and the human keep moving. The explosion from the fallen drones still echoes in her ears, and the shockwave that had knocked the machine out of the sky has left a trail of destruction in its wake. They don't have time to rest, though. Every second counts. The widow knows that they're not safe yet. The drones will regroup, and the enemy will never stop hunting them. They move quickly, weaving through jagged rocks and debris, their eyes scanning every shadow. The human's pace is slower now, his injuries taking their toll, but he's determined. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going," he mutters, his voice strained. "I'm not built for this." The widow glances at him, her expression unreadable. "You're still standing, aren't you?" she says, her voice sharp. That's all that matters. The human nods, grimacing, but there's a fire in his eyes now. He's not just fighting to survive anymore, he's fighting with her. And that's something she hasn't felt in a long time. Suddenly, the ground shakes beneath their feet, and they both freeze. A low mechanical hum fills the air. The widow's eyes widen, and she pulls the human behind a large boulder for cover. "Stay down," she whispers, urgently. "They've sent more." From behind the boulder, they watch as more drones descend from the sky, smaller, faster, and even more deadly than the last one. They move in perfect unison, their glowing red eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of life. The widow can hear their mechanical whirs growing louder, their movements synchronized with terrifying precision. "We're outnumbered," the human says, his voice tight with fear. "There's no way we can fight them all." The widow takes a deep breath, her mind racing. There has to be a way. They can't just run, they'll never escape. If they don't take a stand, this is it. This is their last chance. She turns to the human, her expression hardening. "We fight." The human looks at her, disbelief in his eyes. "Are you crazy? We're not soldiers, we're just survivors." The widow's gaze is unyielding. "You've survived this far. Now, we fight back." The human hesitates for a moment, then nods slowly. "All right, let's do this." With renewed determination, they spring into action. The widow grabs a nearby piece of debrine old energy rifle she'd scavenged from the wreckage and readies herself. The human, despite his injuries, picks up a small makeshift weapon from the remains of the crashed ship. They exchange a glance. Silent understanding passes between them. They may be an unlikely team, but they are in this together now. The widow steps out from behind the boulder, her weapon raised. The drones immediately spot them, their red eyes locking on to the two figures. The widow takes a deep breath and fires, the blast of energy cutting through the air, striking one of the drones dead center. It sparks and sputters before collapsing in a heap of twisted metal. The human fires next, his shot going wide, but it's enough to distract another drone. The widow takes advantage of the opening, her rifle firing again, knocking another drone. From the sky, the battle is chaotic, each shot ringing out as the widow and the human fight for their lives. The drones are relentless. However, they swarm around them, moving in fast, deadly circles. The widow fires another shot, but one of the drones evades her, charging straight for her. She doesn't have time to react before it slams into her, knocking her to the ground. The human screams, rushing to her side, but before he can reach her, one of the drones turns its focus on him. In that split second, something changes in the widow. She rises to her feet, anger and desperation flooding her senses. No more running, no more hiding. This ends now. She lunges toward the drone, attacking the human, her hand reaching for a sharp piece of debris nearby. With a swift, brutal strike, she stabs it deep into the drone's core. The machine jerks violently before shutting down, its systems short-circuiting. The human looks up in surprise as she pulls him away from the wreckage. You saved me." The widow gives him a brief, unreadable glance. We're not done yet. They continue to fight, each move calculated, each shot purposeful. The drones are beginning to malfunction, their once synchronized movements now erratic. They're weakening, and the widow can sense victory within her grasp. But they're not out of danger yet. As the final drone falls to the ground, the widow takes a step back, her breathing heavy and ragged. She wipes the sweat from her forehead, her hands still gripping her weapon. The human stands beside her, equally exhausted, but his face is filled with awe and gratitude. "We did it," he says, his voice hoarse. The widow nods, though her mind is already moving on to the next challenge. The battle is won, but the war is far from over. There are still more drones out there. Still more. Enemies hunting them. But for now, they've survived. Together, the widow looks at the human. A fleeting moment of connection passing between them. She doesn't know what comes next, but one thing is certain. They've made it this far because they trusted each other, and that trust will be their greatest weapon moving forward. We're not done yet, she says, her voice steady. But we're still alive, and that's enough. This part features an intense action scene where the widow and the human make their final stand against the drones. They fight back with determination, and though they're battered and outnumbered, they manage to win the battle. The bond between them grows stronger, setting the stage for what's to come. Let me know if you need any changes, you said. The dust begins to settle over the battlefield, the last remnants of the fallen drones smoldering in the heat of the fire. The widow and the human stand in the aftermath of their fierce fight, their bodies bruised, exhausted, and covered in dirt. Their weapons are still in hand, but there's no immediate threat. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, the widow allows herself a moment of relief. The tension in her shoulders loosens, and she lets out a breath she didn't realize. She'd been holding the human, leaning heavily on the makeshift weapon he'd been using. Looks over at her with a tired but genuine smile. "I didn't think we'd make it out of that one," he says, wiping the blood from his forehead. "But we did." The widow glances at him, a flicker of something like warmth shifting behind her hard, cold exterior. "Thank you." "We did." She agrees, her voice low. The human lets out a short laugh, though it's tinged with exhaustion. "I guess I'm not as useless as I thought." The widow doesn't reply immediately. Her gaze drifts over the wreckage, her mind already turning to the future. She's never been one to rely on others to trust them, but in this moment, something has changed. She realizes that the human hasn't just been an ally in battle. He's become something more. A companion, perhaps even a friend. But there's still work to be done. The war is far from over. The hunter drones might be defeated for now, but their presence is just a small part of the greater danger. The widow's people may be gone, but there are remnants of their enemies out there, enemies who still seek to wipe out every last trace of her species. And yet, she feels something stirring within her, something that's been buried beneath years of loss and pain. Hope. "We need to keep moving," the widow says, finally, breaking the silence. "We can't afford to stay here. There will be more on the way, and we need to find shelter before nightfall." The human nods, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Right. Let's keep going." As they make their way through the rocky terrain, the widow can't help but glance at the human every so often. His injuries are still evident. He's far from fully healed, but he's moving with a sense of purpose now. A determination she's starting to recognize in herself. There's something about this human, something in the way he fights, in the way he doesn't give up even when the odds are against him. It reminds her of her people's old strength, the courage that they once had before everything was taken from them. After a while, they come across a small, hidden villa safe haven nestled between the jagged cliffs. The widow takes a moment to assess their surroundings before nodding, satisfied that it's secure. "Here," she says, gesturing toward the shelter. "We'll rest here." They both drop to the ground, their bodies too tired to do anything but collapse. The widow leans back against a rock, her eyes scanning the horizon, always alert. But for the first time in a long while, there's a feeling of peace. However fleeting it may be, the human looks at her, his expression softening. "We've been through a lot, haven't we?" The widow nods. "More than you know." A silence falls between them, but it's not the tense silence they've shared before. This time, it's a quiet understanding, an unspoken bond that's been forged through shared danger and survival. The widow doesn't know what's coming next. She doesn't know if she and the human will make it through whatever challenges lie ahead. But she knows one thing for sure, they're not alone anymore. For the first time, the widow allows herself to feel a flicker of something she hasn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe this human, this stranger can show her that there's still a future worth fighting for. I don't know what will happen next, the widow says, her voice steady but softer than before. But we'll face it together. The human looks at her, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Together. That sounds good. The widow can't help but return the smile, albeit a small one. It's not much, but it's a start. A new beginning. And maybe, just maybe, it's enough to build something more as the sun sets behind them. The sky turning a deep purple. They sit in silence, the weight of the day slowly lifting. There's still danger ahead, but for now, in this moment, they've found something they both desperately needed, a new beginning. This part represents a turning point for the characters. They've survived the battle, and now there's a moment of comma, chance to reflect on what they've been through and the bond they've formed. It sets the stage for their future journey together, while still leaving room for uncertainty and the challenges they will face. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. The last remnants of daylight disappear behind the distant hills, casting the valley in a twilight gloom. The widow and the human sit in silence, the cool evening air settling around them. They've survived the worst of the danger, but the weight of the unknown still presses heavily on their shoulders. They may have found a temporary haven, but they both know this peace won't last forever. The widow looks up at the stars, the constellations of her homeworld scattered across the dark sky. For a moment, she lets herself remember. The stars used to be a symbol of hope, possibility, but now they're a reminder of what was lost. Her people, her culture, everything she once knew, gone. The silence of the universe feels suffocating, but there's also something strangely comforting in it. She's not alone anymore. She's with him, and somehow that makes it bearable. The human watches her, sensing the melancholy that hangs over her. He doesn't understand it fully, but he can feel it in the air. He can see it in the way she stares at the stars, as if she's searching for something, a sign, perhaps, or an answer she doesn't yet have. "Are you okay?" he asks softly, his voice breaking the stillness. The widow doesn't immediately answer. She just nods, her gaze unwavering. I single quotes am ... learning to be. The human gives a small nod, as if understanding something unspoken. He shifts his position, trying to make himself more comfortable despite the pain in his body. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect ... you. She looks at him then, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, she almost lets herself relax. He's right. Neither of them expected the San alliance born out of desperation, a bond formed from necessity, yet now it feels like something more. But that thought makes her uneasy. She's not used to trusting anyone, and she knows better than to rely too heavily on a human, no matter how much he's proven himself. What do you mean by that? She asks, her voice measured, though there's a slight curiosity in her tone. The human shrugs, his expression open but thoughtful. I thought all humans and aliens were ... enemies, but here we are. And I'm not so sure about the whole enemy thing anymore. You're not what I expected. The widow's lips twitch slightly, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her mouth. And what did you expect? He looks out at the stars, his voice quieter now. I thought you'd be cold, ruthless. But ... you're not. You fight to survive, yes. But you also feel. I can see that. And it's surprising. The widow says nothing at first, her eyes scanning the landscape before her. I used to think I didn't feel anything anymore. Not after everything that's happened, but ... I guess I've been wrong. There's a brief pause, and then the human shifts, his expression darkening. So, what's next? Are we just going to keep running from the drones? keep hiding? Her gaze turns to him, her expression hardening slightly. We can't keep running forever. The drones were just the beginning. There are others out there, forces that want us both dead. But we're not going to run from them. Not anymore. The human looks at her, his brow furrowed. So what? We fight. The widow's eyes narrow, her voice steady. Yes, we fight. The human seems to weigh her words, the gravity of what they're about to face settling in. And then what? After we've fought, what's left? The widow stands, her silhouette framed by the fading light. We keep fighting. We don't stop, we survive. The human stands as well, slowly, as if testing the strength left in his body. And after all the fighting, what's the point? What's left to hope for? The widow turns her back to him, gazing out into the darkness. She doesn't answer right away, her mind working through 1,000 possibilities. What's left for them? What could there possibly be after all the bloodshed and loss? But then, for the first time in a long time, she feels something shift inside her. Maybe she doesn't have all the answers. Maybe she can't see the future clearly. But there's something she knows for sure. She and the human, they've come this far together. And together, they'll find a way forward. She speaks, her voice quiet but firm. We find a new purpose. We create something better. Something worth fighting for. The human nods, a small, determined smile forming on his lips. I think I like that idea. The widow turns her gaze back toward him, her eyes softening for the briefest moment. Good, because we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future. As the night deepens and the stars twinkle above, they stand side by side, the weight of the world on their shoulders. But for the first time, they feel a sense of unity, a shared purpose. They're not just survivors, they're fighters. And they're ready for whatever comes next. Suddenly, a distant sound echoes through the valley. A low rumble, followed by a sharp, mechanical screech. Both the widow and the human tense, their hands reaching for their weapons. The sound grows louder, closer. They're coming. But this time, the widow doesn't hesitate. She turns to the human, her expression set. In stone, get ready. It's not over yet. They step forward, weapons in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. This part sets up the next phase of the journey, where the widow and the human embrace their roles as warriors, ready to fight for a future that's worth more than just survival. The cliffhanger ending leaves the audience with a sense of anticipation, setting the stage for the next chapter in their journey. Let me know if you need anything else.